Hello everyone, it's Elena here from Recruit UK, and this week I'm joined by Alice Lording, partner and head of wealth operations at Saltus. Within this week's episode, we discuss everything from a management, hiring manager perspective, how you deal with mental health in the workplace, how you create a strong career progression framework that keeps your staff motivated and challenged. And we also touch on why inclusivity and diversity is really important within financial planning. In this episode, we talk all things communication, empathy, and how we, at the end of the day, just need to realize that we are all human. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me today. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you as well for the offer. I really appreciate
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm sure you've got lots to share with our audience, and I'm really excited to have you joining us today. So it's the question that I start with everyone, but can you tell me a little bit about your career journey to date and how you've got to the point that you are now?
it. Yeah, so a long time ago. So when I was leaving college, so I was 18, I wasn't in a position to go to university. So I decided to go into an apprenticeship, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I'd done sciences at college, so I looked at all types of apprenticeship. I knew I just wanted to get on with my career and start working. I found one in financial services. I started doing the like BTEC and MBQ in business admin, level three. At the same time, I started doing my level three, like a qualification in the industry, and really got a taste for it. To be honest with you, really was enjoying it. So then I moved on to the level four qualification with LIBF, and then moved around a couple of companies to find the right opportunity and the right fit for me. Moved into power planning, head of power planning, and then with Saltus in September, I became head of wealth operations.
Oh, congratulations. So you've had a very exciting career journey today. You've gone then through that process of like all the way from apprenticeships, and you're a partner at Saltus now as well. So you've gone through that whole journey. You mentioned then as well, and we spoke about this previously, that you were in a couple of firms where you spent like a gap of time and then eventually ended up at Saltus. So, why did you go through a couple of different positions? What sort of enticed you about Saltus, about wanting to stay there?
So personally, I really like a challenge. That's what sort of gets me fired up. So when I get in a company and it's the first few months and you're learning the ropes, it's really tricky and you've got to get your head down and focus. That kind of fires me up. And I would get in, get it, and then I'd be like, cool, what's next? Like, where do I go now? What's the next qualification? What's the next, step for me or role? And then it might be there were smaller firms sometimes. It might be there wasn't really something for me, or maybe, and sometimes they really try to offer positions and stuff, but maybe they wasn't the one for me or where I wanted to go. So I'd end up looking a field, basically somewhere else. I'd end up looking at other roles that gave me that opportunity. And I looked at other size companies. I maybe moved to bigger companies to get more opportunity. So I'd move along, and then Saltus actually, interestingly, when I first went to Saltus, it was daunting as a big company. I went in as a power planner, so I actually took a slight back step in a way. I was
Hmm.
technically head of power planning at a small firm before, but it was head of power planning more like head of the function. There was no other power planners. So I kind of went back to power planning solely, having no responsibility for the function, which was handy. But then with the opportunity that it was a bigger firm and it was growing very rapidly, so I had the opportunity to move on,
Hmm.
that something would come up. And I've just been, you know, working really hard, obviously at Salter, but right time, right place, because they've grown exponentially. So I was lucky enough to be interviewed and offered the head of power planning role after a year. After another year, they offered me the partnership. And then about 2 years later, this role came up for head of wealth. So it kept me kind of pushing that next thing. And they're also supporting me with a master's in
Oh,
business
wow.
admin. Yeah. So lots of opportunities and pushing and just to keep me going. And, I like to be challenged and busy. So it's really, yeah, it's offered me everything I needed.
Yeah, good. I think that's a really interesting point to mention because lots of the firms that I deal with from a recruitment perspective, they might see people that have been at a firm for like 2 years and then have moved somewhere else for 2 years, and view that sometimes, unfortunately, as a bit of a red flag. But it's really interesting to hear from someone who's obviously been really successful and has found what might be their forever home in Saltus, that really this looking from moving from one job to another is due to the fact that you want to be challenged, you're hungry to learn more, you're ambitious, you're motivated, which are really all key drivers of an excellent employee rather than the negative connotations that can sometimes come from that. So I think that's a really good thing to highlight to people in our audience that are also hiring managers or come within a position of influence in their business, that something that you might view as a red flag, you're actually missing out on a whole set of attributes which make someone a really strong individual, really.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's I'll always ask if I see like CVs with gaps or with moving around, is I'll always ask because as well I think you have to find the right place for you so that they will push you, that you can give something to that role. So I always say to people when I'm interviewing now as well, like I want them to learn about us as well, because if it's not the right fit for them, and that's like completely understandable, they need to feel like this is a home for them too, where they can get everything they need. So I try and talk to them about, and as well, I think it's really important to talk about the boring days of a role, because sometimes there are tougher days. We talked just before this, and sometimes you might struggle to get through the number of emails you've got, or so sometimes there are days that aren't as rewarding maybe as other days. So you have to be like honest about where you're going, as well as like where this person, their experience has been, and why they've moved through that path.
Yeah, it's definitely got to be a two fit, hasn't it? It's got to be right for the individual and right for the company. But I think, yeah, it just goes to show that those things, and as you said, as a hiring manager, you ask those questions and ask about those gaps, but some people aren't that forward thinking, and it just goes to show that there is always reasons behind that, and don't miss out on someone who could be a great fit for your business because of a preconceived conception that you may have. And that comes from someone like yourself, as you mentioned, who has been a hiring manager and has definitely gone through that interview process. So for you personally, like, what has been your key driver? You mentioned that you want to be challenged. Has that been just in terms of like progressing within roles, examinations? What are those different elements that really gets you fired up?
I would actually say as well, like over time it's changed. I kind of in different roles, I've kind of like moving to, so I wanted to progress and I wanted to be able to give back to a business and have it like a contributing part as well. So you want to like progress to a stage where actually you're changing something, or something you bring in, you see it happen, and it's really exciting. That kind of giving back in a way.
Hmm.
But I'd say most recently, I've really enjoyed, since maybe being head of paraplanning, is actually looking at other people and where their skills lie, and coaching or supporting them, or looking at their progression and helping them move through. That's something that probably I'd never really thought about until you're in a management role, that would be something that drives me. But sitting down and talking to people, that looking at them at the Christmas party, there's a guy actually that I was talking about, I'm hoping you won't mind me mentioning him, but someone else who's I think he's 26 now. He came in as a graduate. He worked on my team when I was head of paraplanning, and I also helped him when he moved to another team where he started like junior advising, and he's now like a fully fledged qualified financial advisor at 26.
Wow.
Yeah, and almost
Wow.
started. Yeah, like that's such a nice feeling. You think I
Yeah.
had like a small amount of a part in that, but making sure he had the track to run on, like that was nice. Really.
Management, I think, is a really undervalued role. I think financial planning as an industry is such an amazing industry because you can add such tremendous value to other people. But management is like another layer within that, where you can add tremendous value to the people in your organization and people within your profession. I am also like an assistant manager at Recruit UK, and I completely empathize with what you're saying. Speaking to people that have their own wobbles on one reason or another, and then you get that text or they pull you you aside in the office being like, I've just done this, and you know that you played a part in boosting that morale or giving them the tools that they needed to execute it themselves, and seeing how happy they are just gives you that warm fuzzy feeling. You can have a day at work where you feel like it's not gone the best, but if you've seen the team around you, do really well, you go
Yeah.
home with a sense of achievement then, really. So talking about like the leadership side of things, I'm going to blow your trumpet here, Alice, because you were obviously shortlisted for team leader of the year. So you've
Oh,
obviously like a very good renowned sort of leader in your own right. So I guess from your side of things, lots of people I think have ambitions to step into management. I definitely wanted to step into management, but what do you think makes a good manager, or what are those attributes that you can pick out?
so one of the things I always say, which I know it sounds a bit I don't mean it to sound empty or like is trying. You won't always get it right. You won't, and you'll have tough conversations, or you'll need to have tough conversations, but trying to get the best outcome and always having like that best intention and like kindness. So you sometimes tough conversations need to happen because actually it's just a small little thing, and actually if they improve it, they're like the world opens up to them. So just trying to be the best you can be to support them is probably one of my like favorite things, because like I say, you just won't get it right. And if you put too much pressure on yourself to get it right, I think you've got more chance of like scuppering yourself because it's all too, maybe forced or so I've had people where we put them on progression plans and they're doing a great job, but there's something I just feeling that they're maybe not that content with where they're going. And sometimes it's hard. So sitting down and actually saying, how are you feeling? Do you want to try something else? That's not like the nicest fit. I don't want him to think that, we're giving up on him or anything, but you've just got to try and see actually with your gut and your kindness, as long as you've got a relationship you're building with these people, that you can actually go, what is it that you actually want and where do you want to go? Because the path sometimes from like CS, client services or admin to paraplanning to advising seems so like dead set, and people feel like that's the only route. And it's wonderful we have a route like that, and someone was on it and they were doing a cracking like the meeting all the markers, but I could feel something in them that when you talked to them about it, there was no
Yeah.
like wonderful, warm, fuzzy feeling. And it's hard to say to them, is this what you want? But you have to try and get them to open up and sit with them. And that was a tough call to make because I don't want to think I didn't want them to do it. So I'd probably just say the right intentions, effort, kindness, and you're just listening to them, to be honest with you, letting them lead and you supporting them where they go.
I think kindness is such a big thing. Like, I think there's definitely like a fine line between management where you've got to be you're their manager, you're not always their friend. And I think it's that very fine line of like juggling both of them, because I want everyone to know that I'm their biggest supporter and their biggest cheerleader. That's my like what I enjoy most about management. But you've also got to have that element of holding people accountable and questioning them when you don't think that something is right. And I think that's something I personally struggle with, because you always want to be that positive character. So how do you potentially approach those a bit more confronting conversations? I'm sure there's hiring managers or potential leaders listening to this that, it's the positive sign sounds great, but how do you handle those more negative conversations?
Yeah, it's really tough. I would probably say before you even go in, you need to make sure that with that person you have a relationship of like trust and you're open to feedback too. Because I think if they know that I'm not going to go right all the time, and they can tell me I'm going right all the time, then they know that we're in like a free open space where we can talk about things. And the thing I've also always said is that it's actually really kind to tell people. It's not easy, it will be hard, but it's actually the kindest thing to do is tell them where they're maybe not meeting the grade or maybe struggling in your opinion, because they may not know, they may have other things going on, just wait for someone to ask. And you can put in place that support. So I tend to sit down with people and talk to them about the outcome that maybe isn't desirable. Say, what's going on here, and the numbers were lower this month, or whatever the kind of the thing is, and then work backwards and kind of say, okay, do you feel like that's sufficient, or you're comfortable with that number, how are you feeling about it, and start to work around it all. And then you can kind of maybe offer some help or some support and go, actually, well, I was wondering if maybe we could get you into this training for that, because it really open you up. And usually once people are aware, like if you go, a really simple example, if you've got a target and they haven't met it, people know that. So you can sit down and sort of say, oh, was there something going on, or what's happened there? And you can unpack it backwards rather than kind of going and think, I think you're being a bit lazy this month.
Yeah.
Slightly too, but you can get back to that and kind of maybe go, okay, so why do you think this happened? Or I'm feeling demotivated at the minute, and you can actually then work backwards, which is the way that
Yeah.
that's my preference.
I think that openness and kindness though is key, because if you are someone who is open and kind, those times when you have got to be a bit more assertive, people understand that there's a reason for that. I think you just touched on as well that like other, someone might not have performed that month as well as you would have hoped, whatever role that might be in and what that means in terms of KPIs. But you mentioned then, like, is something else going on? Do you feel like there in those kind of conversations, or as a good manager, there's that unpacking of the personal as well as the professional?
Yeah, I think it's really important. And people may not want to tell you, people, that it's completely understandable however they want to take it. But I think giving them the chance to say, if anything's going on, like we really want to support you, we have compassionate leave and sick leave and all these things, all these tools at your disposal. If something's going on at home, you can change their hours for a period of time. Like, we just need to know the best way to support you to be successful in your role. That's like all I need to know. So if there's something going on, and like a lot of it, I can't like stress enough. The thing for me is building that relationship with people,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's quite hard sometimes. I think as a leader, sometimes you have to share to build it, because it has to be equal. If someone's going through something, say, I can completely understand where you are, and I've had X, Y, Z, or this, you can just sit in the boat with them rather than like outside the boat, which I feel like makes a big difference with people, that you literally have your arm around them, like metaphorically, like you can literally just say, I can't even imagine, that's happened to me, or this,
Yeah.
take as long as you need. And they can really feel it, rather than it being like, HR says you can take 2 compassionate leave days, and it's actually just getting in with them and sitting with them and building that relationship, so they actually know everything is genuine and coming from a genuine place, even when underperformance is triggered by something going on at home. Because then you can have it, and they know, like you say, if they know you're a reasonable person and you've built a relationship and you're reasonable in all other aspects, you can say to them, the thing I'm worried about is if this is going on at home, it's affecting your performance. We are measuring performance. If you're in, 5 days a week, we're measuring on 5 days a week. So we just need to know the best way to support you to hit whatever targets are fair at the time. So it's kind of having that reasonable, open discussion, I'd probably say.
Do you think then empathy is a really important, thing for a team leader to be able to have, not be shut off from what other people's experiences are, but to really feel what their team is feeling?
Yeah. I think you do have to, like I say, get in the boat and kind of really, because things affect people differently as well. So something that maybe you have experienced something similar for, um, but that it hits different. We're all different, but I think listening to them and understanding, being empathic, but with a level of, people also like that, like security. It's like, don't worry, leave it with me. I'll go get the commercial leave. So that kind of like confidence, you don't have to worry about this. You go take the time, and just being able to support them, being empathic, but without like running in and kind of
Yeah.
going, don't worry, you do what you need to do, because people deal with it so differently. I've had people who would rather send me a message and say, like, I can't talk about it at the minute, but this is what's happening, so we can have an email exchange. So I'm not going to press someone to have a video call with me when they are teary, and that's not something they're comfortable doing. It's however that person needs to deal with it at the time. And if someone wants a hug, then that's the other end of the spectrum, and they can come in and we can have that conversation. But you need to let people do it their way. So it's almost like being empathic, but reflecting
Hmm.
rather than giving the level of empathy you would like, because that's not what everybody is comfortable with.
I guess understanding everyone's individual needs, but being empathetic towards their feelings, how they handle it, and the situation. It's a very multifaceted approach. But I guess like I said, like I'm assistant manager at Recruit UK. I
Yeah,
totally wear my heart on this my sleeve. Everyone knows if I'm having a bad day, if I'm having a good day. People
yeah,
know if someone's annoying me at home. Like I just wear everything on my sleeve. I just got a big mouth. I can't help it. But I think on the flip side, that really helps when people come to me with a problem, because I will have a frown on my face and people might be like, "Oh, are you okay?" And I'll be very open and honest. I'm having a bit of a bad day today. This is going on. But I think that means it sets a standard of then the team or other people within the business being able to approach you,
I'm a
because they
human.
yeah, we're all human. I think that is probably the biggest thing about being a manager is displaying that humanity. Like I am a human being, you're a human being, and
Yeah,
we're all in this situation together.
everyone's got stuff going on. Everyone's busy. Like we've all fractious sometimes. Even I say sometimes, like you might be on a bad day, whether it's like something life changing is happening or you stubbed your toe getting out of the car on the way in. Like we all are humans, and you carry, like I call us like emotional sponges. You
Love
carry
that.
like with you, like you. Oh, I stubbed my toes. There's a little bit like oh, and then oh, and So sometimes you have like those days, which I try and like avoid. But you dropped your coffee and you stubbed your toe and curbed your car, like and you come in and you're all
Felt
a bit like
sponged.
sponged. Yeah, you grabbed all of that. So it's a weird thing to kind of be aware of. Like it might not even be a big thing that day that their performance was tricky, or just letting them have a minute to think about. And sometimes it's just reflecting, like
Mm,
let them have a minute, have a chat, be a human. Like they say, way heart sleeve, let them be open, safe space, quiet space, out the way, like, and then you can just hopefully work through it, find a solution, or they go, oh no, just yeah, I'm back. Like I was just having a bit of a funk or something, or
mhm.
they give them the space to do it.
I'm really proud, and it sounds like Saltus is very similar, but I'm very proud of how Recruit UK's attitude towards mental well-being and mental health is, because as I said, I wear my heart on the sleeve. Everyone knows what's going on, and I like to feel that other people within our business can be very open and honest about where they are at, whether that is something that is broached in a one-to-one because of, we said, you look a bit demotivated, whether that is someone really reaching out to you. But I think mental health is very much something that is spoken about within the workplace. And we're very open about us being humans and not just being robots that do our job and then get turned off at 5 p.m. But I know people within our company, or even, businesses that you speak to, which is very archaic in its approach of like, this is your workspace. You walk in the door, you leave that outside. You don't bring that, like a really sharp divide in between what is like the personal and what is the professional. I know mental health and speaking about that, in a work environment, it's really important to you. So would you like to elaborate on that a bit further, and why that's something that you're passionate about?
Yeah, I think it, we're all human, as we said. Like you would be a robot if things didn't affect you, and it's just really important. We are people, and if you want the best out of people, actually them having a bit of time or whatever they need, like it's up to they need to tell us. That's the only thing we need them to like tell us what they need, tell us what's going on, but they should tell us what they need so we can make sure that we are doing everything within our realm to support. We've got really lovely like benefits. So we get Bupa support, and there's like counselling on offer. There's all these things, and I'm quite happy to speak to people about my experiences with like having counselling as a young adult. Like we go through so many changes as human beings, and the world is such a strange place sometimes. So I think talking about it and saying to people like, if you can hear something in someone else. I had a conversation with someone about performance recently, and you kind of go, is there anything else going on? And they kind of sort of say, oh, it's just this, and but my friend said that's like really normal to feel nervous about this, and it's like it may be normal to people. You don't have to accept it though. You don't have to like sit in it. So maybe think about this. There's this great tool, and just knowing what's there and what we offer, not just in terms of like personnel policy, like holiday and sick, but also being like there is so many more tools out there, and it's worthwhile. And I think if you can just gently mention that, oh, I've had it before and it's really good, and this is how it helped me. I just think you can kind of like help. debunk the taboo. And it's, on one-on-one conversations, it's really quiet. It's not something that like usually you shout about, but if you're having that and just opening up being like, yeah, it's really good, and this is what's on offer, and make sure you use it. And I've had messages from people that go, I contacted them, I got sessions booked in, it's really good. And it's just, even if you I think there's a thing about, you have to be like at a certain point to use, counseling, or to use certain support, but it's just, we're all human. We need to unload some stuff, we need to unpack some stuff, work through it. Why is it happening? And so I think I'd say it's probably partially down to debunking taboo and stuff. And
Yeah.
we do like, we have a huddle, as we call it, with all of our team there. And we've talked about things during COVID, and we set up groups during COVID just to help with positivity, mental health, keeping people going and stuff. I think it's just literally gently, not enforcing it on people, not pushing it, some people aren't ready, but just mentioning it and being not uncomfortable by talking about it.
Yeah, I think anything we talk about naturally like debunks that myth
Yeah.
and makes it something that people are more accessible, because we're speaking about it, we're throwing it out there into the open. And from someone that's done 2 courses of counselling, both, having paid for by my workplace or funded by my workplace, I understand how those small tools can make such a massive difference in your outlook. And I will always very openly speak about it, because I think the best analogy for me is like, people may feel like they don't need to access it, but like if you've got a bad knee and you keep falling over and the knee hurts and you trip and you go, oh, I've really pulled that knee. Someone goes to go to the doctor. You'd never go, oh no, I won't. You'd always go and access that support. While it's the same with your mental health. Like it might be a small thing, but you might seem to keep tripping. It might keep bothering you. Like there is support, like services out there that can support you. And I'm always very grateful to be part of a business that offers counselling as a benefit, because I think it's one of the easiest but most simplest things that firms can do to support their employees. So coming from a place where we spend a lot of time at work, you spend a lot of time, I probably spend more time seeing people that I work with than my partner, who he might say that's a good thing. But do you think, workplaces, organizations can actually, we're talking about adding value here, can play a big part in supporting their employees' mental health? And do you think that's important in having that infrastructure?
Yeah, I think so. I think as well, what we underestimate is the small things, like having these difficult conversations with people. Like these can really impact people's like self-worth, their, it's how you do all those small things as well. Having great benefits is great, but if you having your leadership team having empathy and awareness and kindness when they deal with stuff too. So I do think it's the small things that make a huge difference.
Yeah.
I can have difficult conversations with people and my tone won't change. There might not be quite so many high pitches in it, but your tone doesn't need to change, because you don't know what's going on at home. And if they take that home with them, that their self-worth affected by a difficult conversation at work, when actually it's just a minor thing that you just work through, and how do we help? And so I think it's so much more than just being like, oh, we have a great benefits package, da da da. It's also like team engagement, so making sure they feel part of the group. So like I say, we have something that we call the huddle, which is on a Thursday with all 200 staff members. It's fantastic, and our like CEO or other board members like usually run it. And it's we do all like the lovely thing. It's not just like we do a news bulletin on like how the markets are doing and all that, like that kind of thing. But we do, someone's got married, we put photos up. Someone engaged, we put photos up. Yeah, we do like make sure that everyone feels connected to something as well, which I think makes for me, it definitely like that warm fuzzy feeling about being at Saltus and feeling like I know most of these 200 people and I actually have a lot of care for them as people makes such a big difference. So you get less of that like little emails where it's like a little bit of a tone or caps locks or like, Alice, can you you know those people. It's like, oh hi Alice, like I hope you had a good weekend because I knew you were doing something, or so and so got engaged. You have like an affiliation as well, which I think personally for me and my mental health has been so much nicer because they're people are treating you like people, even if you're quite far removed. you see your mates getting engaged. We put up thank yous as well on the huddle. So we have a system where if someone's going to open the bath, you submit them, and we get about 50 a week submitted.
That's so nice.
Yeah. So it's like doing the little days will be hard, days will be boring sometimes. Yeah, there will be tough moments, and there'll be personally and professionally. Like, so having just moments of connectivity and closeness and kindness and all these other things, as well as great benefits, I think it means a lot. Work doesn't have to be like, you have to change your tone to be annoyed. You don't have to like run a really like the beginning of meetings we have a really good laugh, telling stories about kids and dogs, and just because we're people, like you say, we're not here. You can't turn us off at the end of the day. Like, you just
Yeah.
need to be kind to your colleagues, as well as having lovely benefits and all the really important stuff too.
I think it's really nice, and because you've got those tangible benefits, which are the things that you can like write down on paper, like your employee assistance program, compassionate
Yeah,
leave and stuff like that. But you've got those intangible benefits that you can't put down, like that community feel and things like that. And they go hand in hand, really, like one with another. But I think it's a really good point to make, because I think we've spoken about like that quite archaic, viewpoint or mindset where, mental health must be put at the door, outside problems must be put in the door. You're here for 8 hours and you're here to work and perform at 100%. But ultimately, people that might be listening to this that might have that attitude from someone that comes from like a recruitment background, it's the mindset and the community feel that you created, that Salters have created, which in the long term retain staff. Because the amount of people that we speak to that are looking to leave their workplace because they're not getting enough flexibility, they don't feel like a collaborative environment. It's probably one of the key reasons that people leave. So I think business owners can understand that, having a mindset like this kind of perspective is also great for your business, because happy employees stay, happy employees don't look to leave elsewhere. So from like a business perspective, to really look after your staff creates for a happier workforce and a better working workforce, I'm sure, as well.
yeah. I think some of it literally costs nothing, but it does mean that we all need to be like accountable for our own actions and emotions. So like, if I go into the office and I'm a bit like ratty with someone, I have to be aware that it's up to me, like, to create that environment. And even in a certain meeting, it's like, check yourself. Like, this is gonna be a tough meeting. Maybe I'm having a bad day, but you think to yourself, right, you're gonna get myself a coffee. First thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna sit back and go, how you doing? You all right? Literally, because you think, oh, it's up to me. This vibe in this room is up to me. Like, I can, and in this office and in this team and in this whole community, it's, you have the ability to change that, or to influence it, or to start it off. If you're the first person there at the summer party and the next person walks in, you don't say hello, and you just sit quietly, that's you've created like a divided room already before anyone's even sort of turned up. So if you can go in and go, hi, I haven't seen ages. Oh, sorry, I haven't looked at your name, and they're literally like, oh, everyone's like sort of atmosphere kind of changes. Like, say, even if it's a one-on-one meeting, if it's a big room, I think you just have to, and you can have a bad day, but just see what you want to bring to this day. And sometimes it's a tough meeting, sometimes it's a an exciting one. You just, what are you going to bring to it, and how are you going to create that atmosphere in that office or that room.
Yeah, and how you just gonna make the office a happy, healthier, more a better environment to be in, I think. And we've spoken then like about like pain points, I guess, that come from like mental health, or like going through like a period that might be a bit more negative. But another thing, and I've spoken about how that's one of the key indicators where people look to leave. But I think another key indicator where people look to leave is not feeling like they have that progression plan in place, which I know is something that you're also really passionate about, is like spotting those training needs, making sure that everyone is developing at a pace and down a route that they're comfortable on. So do you mind elaborating on that for us in a bit more detail?
Yeah, I think it's one it's a tough one, because sometimes people don't know themselves. Sometimes you speak to people and actually they've got like no idea what they want to do or where they want to go. And I'd say I'm learning too, like, how best to have these conversations. But I think working through, so we've made progression plans that do work from our client services or administrators through paraplanning into advising. We've got graduate schemes that move people around all the teams, and then they can decide what team they feel like they best suit. It's not always like straight through to advising. It's like you're a graduate at Saltus, so you might have a natural affiliation with data or with marketing. So we'll move around all the areas and we'll see where you go. I think what I found in this, because we created the structure, which is great. We have, advisor assessment days. If people want to be advised, they go to this day, they do a role play, do stuff. We have graduate assessment days, so they come and then we'll see if we want to put them on graduate schemes. We have all these wonderful tools. But I think, again, it literally all comes down to like communication and sitting with them and having a relationship, because even on that process, their mind might change. They might go and do their stint on the graduate scheme in the data team. And actually, they're like, I don't want to go anywhere else. This is the best place for me. So staying close to them and talking to them is like the most important thing through all of those stages. Like, say we had someone who was well on their way to being an advisor and easily could have, done it. He was so talented. But having like conversations with him and giving him other bits to do and still challenging him, he was like, he's looking up Power BI in his spare time. He was like, which is, I won't even try and explain it. I'm not even too sure I know what it is, but he's looking at like these kind of like data systems in his spare time. And you think, that's interesting. He's not on, Financial Times. He's like, how's this? And he's got himself a book. And so we sat him down with that data, no pressure. Go into the office, sit with the data team, ask him some questions, and sat him with a couple of other teams as well, just because we were like, well. And then he decided to he wanted to be a seconded to that team, so we just gave him. That was not a route. That's not like a route we have. We don't go sort of from paraplanning to data regularly, but we just spent time with him, just talked to him, got him speaking to that team. Okay, we'll second you for 6 months. Made sure he covered the team while he was gone. He absolutely loved it. And in its sort of end of year review in December, he decided to stay.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
amazing. It goes to show as well that, like you said, like that communication is key, but also just having those frameworks in place and those structures and being able to, I guess, go into the grey when it's not so black and white. So does everyone when they join Saltus like have an element of like a development plan? Is that something that like everyone is implemented on, like depending on what their journey may be?
yeah. So we don't have one for literally everyone that starts. So what we're doing at the minute is we have like they know they're there. So like they're kind of set paths that sit there. We say to them, there's a paraplanning progression path from client services, and there's a advisor progression path from paraplanning. So you can go and reach out to them and look at them. And for those set paths, we say to people, we'll deliver them to the individuals and say, this is what we told you would love to do. So here you go. And it's got entry and exit criteria. So they can then lead on their performance. So if they want to do something quicker or slower, or they actually, as long as they're hitting those exit criteria and entry criteria, they know they can come to us and say, right, I'm ready, because they've got it. It's like in their gift to own. So we do that with people once they express like the interest in the reviews. What we're starting to do now is bring in a more set quarterly review process. So for every single person, they have a quarterly review, they have objectives with key results, they have these catch-ups with their team leaders, and we're bringing all this in so that literally, I think it's even more than just progression, because it may be that you just love your job, and that's fantastic. But how do you know you're doing a great job? How do you do a better job? How do you get rewarded more? So we're bringing in that kind of like objectives within each role. So whether you want to then be on a progression plan or not, you actually have your own personalized objectives for how you get to the next level of what entices you. So like that guy, his would be around data. So although his progression plan might still, because we wouldn't take that away from him, might still be looking to advising, actually his like objectives and key results are really personalized around exactly what he at that moment, before he knew he wanted to be in data, he wanted to do this, he wanted to look at that. That would be way more personalized that we're bringing in now.
Hmm. And it sounds very much like, there is that opportunity to have that career development path, but stops people from feeling stagnant, because that is a thing that I hear very often from people, that they just feel like they've tapered off and people like to know what the next step looks like. And like you said, you might be in a position where you love your job. You don't want to, you might be a power planner and you love power planning, and you don't want to do anything else, but you have those metrics like, okay, I want to do more bespoke suitability report writing, or I want to do more like complex report writing. And I guess those having those small goals or criterias mean that like people continuously feel like they're developing, because people like to know what the next step is, like what they need to achieve to be better. And that doesn't have to be like getting a promotion or getting a change in title. It can literally just be, I'm better at my job than I was when you spoke to me 3 months ago. I've improved from when we have 3 months ago.
Yeah, I think that's a massive thing. We also we speak to people about, we have a competency matrix, so two different types of cases, and sometimes we talk to them as well about the fact that it doesn't have to go up every single quarter that we speak to them, because it might be that they work with an advisor who let's say in the run up to tax year end, this is a very basic advisor, but they just do carry forwards, right? There's nothing else going on. And then the quarter after, they're doing some carry forwards and they're doing just ISAs and GIAs. That's okay. In those 6 months, maybe you haven't done any bonds, maybe you haven't done much cash flow work or something. Like I say, it's very simple. It's clearly a very simple advisor I've picked here. But there might be some things that actually on your competency matrix have gone down. But what we would do is go, that's okay. So what we'll do is we'll say, we'll take some cases from this other advisor or the other pool that people work in, and your team leader will work with you to pull those cases in so that you can up that. So you'll have like constantly sort of fluctuating goals as well, because if you're focusing, and you might do loads of bond cases because you've just pulled loads in, but maybe then you haven't done a carry forward for a couple of months. So it's like we'll just constantly keep, and we know that you cannot be fresh on everything all the time. You can't know off the top of your head how to do every type of calculation. You may have to refresh yourself if you've not done for a while. So it's just making sure that also you're not too hard on yourself. If some of your metrics go slightly backwards because you've done loads of bond cases, you're now like our bond specialist. But some of your other stuff is like maybe drop down, that we'll just give you a couple of others to freshen you up now and again.
Do you feel like that, like if you had had a career framework like this, or objectives that kept pushing you like this in like previous roles, it would have challenged you and enticed you more to stay, rather than having that feeling of like, I'm going to look further afield now?
Yeah, I think that's definitely what drives some of my like decisions now. Like when I'm looking at stuff and I'm like, oh, how can we make this more interesting? It's definitely like, yeah, what would I have appreciated? What could I view? That kind of, it's definitely you do look at what you'd have appreciated, definitely, and
Yeah.
think about it. But what I have to work on, like I say, I feel like we're all learning. Like I've been managing people for like 3 years or something. That I'm not perfect, and I will happily keep learning. I feel like the thing that we all need to work on is not everybody's like us either. So people maybe don't want to be pushed as hard as I was pushed, or they may not want to, like you say, have that next step. They may want to just be great at this, like one. They might want to be a subject matter expert, or so it's also trying not to push on your like views or your standpoint to people, and actually go, the path is there, but you let me know if you want to take it, and then I'll support you like 110%, but I will not push you. I'll give you the encouragement, the support, the love, the cheerleading, whatever you need, but I will not tell you, push you to take that.
Yeah, ultimately it's your decision at the end of the day. And ultimately, like you've gone through like quite a few leadership roles here. You've gone from like being in a leadership role previously, and then you've gone through Saltus and you were head of power planning. Now you're like the head of operational kind of role. So how do you deal with that managed leadership side of it, things yourself? Like, do you get imposter syndrome and have those moments when you're a bit like, what am I doing? Because I know I sure as hell do. So
Yeah, I think it's really natural. I think that I find that it's like your level of comfort like each time. So like I got comfortable. I sort of knew I was doing day-to-day managing power planners, and now I manage like team leaders, and I manage like heads of. So like each time it's like that extra bit you become like, whoa, this is kind of big. Does anyone realize, like, has anyone sort of caught me out, like, oh my god? But I genuinely just cut, like, the team have been so wonderful. I think if you've got there's like massive respect for you, if you've like worked your way up, if people, you're kind to them, if you're doing all these wonderful things and building a relationship with them, you don't have to behave any differently. Like, I still go into meetings. I went into one speaking like, "Hi, mate," like, and it's one of the guys in client services, and we're having a good chat about where he wants to go, and just we're just two human beings, and it was very sweet. Actually, I was actually interviewing them for another role at Saltus, which is super exciting. And he went, "Ah," he's like, "You've done really well here." And it was really sweet. It was so sweet, yeah. And we started like not long after each other, so it was just so lovely that but I appreciate that. And I was like, "Oh, thank you, babe. Like, I really appreciate that. Like, what can we do like for you?" And so I think just wherever you are, it's just literally being a human, listening to them. Like, you will feel imposter syndrome from time to time, but I think there was a Stephen Bartlett thing. He was saying, like, look at it differently. Like, you're in this like new position. You should feel a bit like, whoa, like you're taking that responsibility like seriously.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
I wouldn't give someone an answer if I didn't know, wasn't sure, take it away. Just give them the confidence you've got it, and you will do your absolute best to
Mhm.
take care of that situation for them. Like,
I definitely feel like imposter syndrome like comes with a level of like discomfort. Like you
yeah,
feel a bit like I think that's the best way for me to describe it. Like it feels uncomfortable. Like you feel like you're in a little bit of an uncomfortable situation. But the best way for me to describe it, or the best way to wrap my head around it was like, growth is uncomfortable. If you spent the rest of your career constantly feeling comfortable, you wouldn't push yourself. You would be speaking to the same people, not broaching those difficult conversations, not taking that step up. Like growth is uncomfortable. And whenever I have that uncomfortable feeling now, and they're like, this is you, like that next petal like blossoming, that you've just grown a little inch taller in terms of like a flower.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm growing, but that's what it is at the end of the day, But I think you've obviously done so well in Saltus, and I think it's nice to hear that you still occasionally have that feeling of like, okay, like this
yeah,
is a bit uncomfortable. But I think it stems down to like what this whole conversation is about, is that we are all human, and to make sure that even if it's a professional capacity alongside not a personal one, treat people that you're with the same amount of respect that you would treat everyone. And I think
yeah,
that leads really nicely into my next point, in terms of like diversity and inclusion is always something that you've been really passionate about as well. So like the idea that, we are all human and we are all equal. So do you mind talking about that a little bit further for us, please, Alice?
yeah. So that's very close to my heart in lots of different like aspects. And we talked about this before, that sometimes like diversity, there are some bits that you look at, but it's also just thinking about the whole, just everybody, we're all different. So I mentioned to you before that, so my parents are in a same-sex relationship, and I feel like for me that's just helped. Like, since I was like two, it just opens you up to different worlds, different groups of people, and I don't know how to explain it. It's just I see people as who they are and what they bring to the conversation and to the world and to everything, rather than sort of any kind of labels. Which I really enjoy, and we've moved into like a diversity and inclusion. We've brought in this committee basically, so it's employee led. So it's myself and a few employees opened up because we were just passionate about it in so many ways. I had a lady on my team who basically has been diagnosed with autism, and while she's been working with me, I've never experienced it before. It's never been something that came up. I've never managed someone with autism, but we spent a lot of time talking about it, being really open. She sent me loads of links to read, and it's just been like that openness and that kindness, and just spending time with them. And every individual person is so different, and what they need is different, and giving them all, like I say, this space to be successful. She tells me what's not useful. Actually, when you communicate like this, I don't really get where you're coming from. I need you to do this, this, and this. Great, amazing. Like, all I want is to make sure that all of them are successful, whether it's progression plans, whether it's, talking to them in a certain way that communicate, that makes it easier. Like, this is just, it makes me really excited to be able to um, just make small amendments to my day, or the way I would talk, or the way I would communicate, that actually makes a huge difference to their ability to be successful as authors. So yeah, it's one of those things that I never really thought about before. But when I got to Saltus and experienced all these things and people are different, and we didn't have a diversity committee, but we were like, we want to be better. Like I say, we're all trying, we're all learning and going, actually, we need this. And we did a big presentation to the whole company on neurodiversity and all the different types. And yeah, it just, I think being open to it and making sure you're just kind, because as well, I wanted to ask her, and it wasn't, I was asking her what she needed from me. And sometimes that maybe makes people feel awkward to be like, oh, don't mention it. It's actually like, but I want to know. Send me things. Let me read content. Let me, help you. We have the most lovely relationship since. It's really helped. I've been able to like mediate conversations for her because the communication's been tricky. She's actually asked me to come along. It's been a really nice experience and like opened me up to way more types of diversity. Obviously, our industry lacking diversity in terms of gender, all that those kind of things, which is hugely important. But there is so much more to it. I think I'm just so much more aware of all the different types of people and neurodivergence and all these things that crop up and you don't maybe think about straight away.
Mhm. I was about to say, like, I think when we talk about, and I think diversity and inclusivity within financial planning is always something that I've been really passionate about. But even when I think about diversity and inclusivity in financial planning, go straight to gender and ethnicity. I think that's naturally where my mindset travels to. I think you've come from a background where you've been exposed to a different level of like diversity from a young age, that it's something that you're a bit more conscious of and you're aware of because you've had that exposure. And obviously talking about this lady with like being neurodivergent, it just shows you that diversity and inclusivity in itself is so diverse. I feel like we can quite often pigeonhole it towards those conversations on gender and ethnicity, which, don't get me wrong, are super important, but we forget that there are other, subcategories and other categories of this wider picture which are also super important. On your side of things, like from a profession perspective, do you think it's important to like promote it so we are more inclusive, so getting people from these different backgrounds into the industry?
I think so. The one that we also sometimes forget is socioeconomic.
Yeah.
So I'm super passionate about it as well, because I wasn't in a position to go to university just because it was like sort of unaffordable, but we weren't in a position where we got lots of help, but we weren't in a position where we could afford to support me when I was doing it as well. So I think that's an important one too. And sometimes in our industry, we have a tendency to people have to have Russell Group University degrees. They have to come from this background. They have to, do these certain things. We forget that's not all of a person. That's not all they are, is their university or where they've come from, or who, because sometimes people get internships through like family friends and stuff, which is also, it's a wonderful opportunity, definitely. But we have to remember that people haven't come from those, experiences. So including, neurodivergence, socioeconomic backgrounds and stuff. So I think it's just really important that as an employer you take each individual, and like we were even saying about the job hopping, you take every individual, give them that chance, as long as they've got the minimum criteria. But as long as the minimum criteria that you set is needed for the job, do you need a Russell Group University degree, or do you need like level 6 learning? Like I don't have a degree, but I have my level 6 sub chartered French plan with LRBF. So but technically when I went to do my MBA, lots of universities wouldn't take me because they wouldn't count my level 6 as level 6 learning.
Wow.
Yeah, they wanted a bachelor's. So even with experience and even with level 6 learning, they wouldn't take me. So we have to make sure that what we're setting is actually needed for the role, or is it preferred? Because we'd like to know you can learn to a level 6. Or we'd like to know that you came from a certain university. Great. Or we'd like you to have banking and finance degree, whatever but is it preference or is it actually essential to that role?
Hmm.
I
And
think
why do
it's
you
really,
think from an industry perspective it's important to like be include, like what do you think that, what value do you think that adds to the industry, having loads of diverse people from loads of different backgrounds? What value does that add?
we just match your client bank as well so much better. You know, you actually you've got all these ideas from all these different people with different backgrounds, and your clients actually see themselves in your team. You know, like we see there's not enough, not enough in my opinion, female advisors. So people may we you know women who are managing their own finances might be looking at your business's board. They might be looking at your list of advisors on your website. Like they're aware and they want to be represented. They different ethnicities. They want to see themselves in your board as well. Like it's not just about actually. So it's like commercial as well as being so diverse that you've got different ideas, different skills, different talents, like wonderful things. You also it's commercial to make sure that you are reflecting your clients. They're not going to want to work with people who actually it's 2023. They want to see themselves in your team.
I think it's amazing because so many of the points that we've spoken about, diversity and inclusivity, like mental health in the workplace and having that empathy towards your staff, like that, having those like career development and progression plans, like we speak to them about how they add value to the individual. But if we look at the wider picture, they do also help your business. Having staff that is happy and feel supported only makes them work harder. Like individuals that feel challenged and motivated only makes them work harder. People that are within a business where they feel like they're included, they feel part of a community, only makes them work harder. So these are great things for the individual, but from a commercial perspective, great to bring in for your business. You're only going to, your business is driven by the people that within it. The happier and the more supported your workplace feel, the better they're going to support your clients that are part of it. So I think it's really interesting how it all interlinks so nicely together. And just I'm going to end it, I think, from a management point of view. And I mentioned this before. I think it's a great nugget of wisdom that you obviously are. You've been a hiring manager. You've been a team leader. You speak a lot about like how career and progression and development is something that you're really passionate about, but lots of people feel like they're in a business where they're not progressing at the rate that they want to or into the roles that they want to. And as you mentioned and said rightfully, that communication is so key, but people very often feel like they struggle to broach that conversation. But coming from a hirer manager's perspective, anyone that's listening to this in this audience that would like to progress, would like to take that next step, but struggling to have that conversation with their hiring manager or their boss, whoever it is, how would you say that they broach it?
I would always say, right, so this is depending on, who that like hiring manager or who, if you're trying to progress in your own business, it's always, if you can, try and do the same things we've been talking about, like as a manager. It's like setting the tone for that room and just make sure that you can be as calm as you can be. And maybe you're frustrated, maybe you're let down, maybe you're feeling like a bit grumpy. But if you can go in there and you can say to them, I've really appreciated everything you've done for me like this far. Like it's been amazing. I'm just starting to feel like a bit of a plateau and I'd love to like see what next steps there are. I'd like to have a conversation about where I could go. And if you can know a little bit about yourself, if you know that you would like, and have a good thing. So don't just feel like you have to go, oh, I want to be an advisor because maybe they have a advisor path. Think about it and go, I'd like to talk about maybe seconding or talk about maybe like speaking to those other managers of other teams and offer something up to your team leader or your manager and just say like in a way that's like I really appreciate everything so far but I'm just ready for like something else. I'm ready for a challenge and a little bit of like I know this company loves to get people regressing, so I want to be a part of that, like giving them a bit of excitement around it. But because I know some of these conversations by that time you might be a little bit frustrated because you think they maybe should know or you maybe should have had some support. But if you can kind of like bring them on side and be like, I want this because I want to be here. I love this place. Like help me to find my spot here. I think any like manager, leader, hiring manager would be just so overwhelmed by being like they love it, they want to be here. What can I do? Like let me help.
Well, thank you so much, Alice, for taking the time to speak with me this morning. It's been a great conversation, but I think the overlying theme, and I think it's a brilliant theme to pull out, is just how communication is key. You know, we are an industry about communicating with our clients, you know, businesses, that communication is key on all different levels, and just that we're all human. I think nice little note to end on is just be kind, be nice to the people around you, your employees, your colleagues. Just be kind, and it will all come back round.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. It's been brilliant.
No, thank you very much, Alice.